Hey, everybody, and welcome into a very special Locked On Bama. I want to welcome in Roman Tomasoff. Am I saying that correctly?
Tomashoff. Tomashoff.
Tomashoff. Okay, I knew it was in there somewhere. Normally, I have Jimmy Stein with me. Jimmy Stein is with On3 Bama Online. He's working really hard right now. There's been a lot going on, obviously, but it looks like Alabama has hired or will hire very shortly one Kalen DeBoer from the University of Washington. So I thought it would be apropos to have the host of Locked On Huskies with us. Roman, how you doing, buddy?
Luke, it's been a whirlwind of a few days. I feel like that's the best way to put it. I'm still getting acclimated to not being in Houston anymore. I was down there for the national championships with the team for the Sugar Bowl, and with the way things are going, it's pretty bleak. I'll just say that.
Well, look, I'm not trying to rub your face in it here by having you on, by the way, but I just wanted look.
Thank you.
It's interesting because I like Kalen DeBoer a lot. I like his resume. His resume is impeccable. It's awesome. I don't think a lot of people know a lot about him from around here,
Sure.
and that's one concern. Look, when you're at the University of Washington, and I'm not trying to downplay this in the least, but I think in this, especially in the SEC, people consider it more about the recruiting than the coaching. It feels like in that area of the country, more people focus a little bit more. They understand the importance of recruiting, but coaching is a very big deal. When you think about some of the bigger names that have been through there, the coaches at Boise State, some of the other coaches at Washington who wouldn't, like a Chris Peterson who didn't necessarily bring in top 5 classes, but he had good teams. Even DeBoer, I mean, he's running some nice players, but
Absolutely.
some of them been transfer portal people.
So no, you're absolutely right. And like with Chris Peterson, it took him a while to get up to that level where it took till his last couple classes to make, and those last two were top 15 classes, right? But there's a difference between top 15 and top 5. And I feel like that's going to be the biggest question because Kalen, just some of the people that I've talked to, it's very easy to buy in to what he's selling as a coach. There's no question about that. He's a really likable guy. He has a fantastic offensive mind. And so one of the very first things, when I talked to a lot of recruits when Kalen first got here as still a little bit of an unknown from Fresno State, from Indiana, still from Sioux Falls, I asked a lot of players, what is it that you like about him? And they all gave me the same kind of reaction, which was winners win, was the one thing that just kept coming around. And I was like, this is a little bit of a cliche, right? And then the more I dug into it, the more I was just around the staff, the more that I just talked to a lot of people involved in the program. It's just a culture that rubs off. It's a player-led program, and Kalen does a really great job of not only like delegating things to the people who are going to get them done, but of instilling a culture of winning and a culture of knowing how to put players in the best position to succeed.
Yeah. Okay. So having said that, you mentioned he's originally from South Dakota. A lot of people may not know that,
Yeah.
but South Dakota, recruiting the South Dakota area or being from there and then trying to recruit in South Alabama. I mean, it's really like going to two different universes,
Right.
culturally and everything else. So, but here's the one thing, and I want you to correct me if you think I'm wrong, that when it comes to recruiting these days, it's really just about as much of, hey, what kind of deal can you get for me? And
Sure.
what kind of NIL deal can I get? Maybe less so than, tradition and things like that, which frankly, since it's not as much about tradition anymore, that hurts Alabama ultimately in a way. But the other side of it is Alabama does have a lot of money and does have a lot of powerful boosters.
No, that's absolutely correct. And that's something where, like, again, as we said here, things still aren't final. And the one thing where, especially because I know Ross Dellinger put this out from Yahoo Sports, one of the things that's been the biggest part of this is Washington's commitment to winning. And of course, we know that Alabama is very committed to winning, right? That's the biggest thing. And my curiosity when it comes to all that is what kind of infrastructure is Alabama going to put in place outside of Nick Saban? Because of course we know everything that he was able to do. And Luke, you can correct me if I'm wrong here as well, where we know everything that Alabama has done revolved around Nick Saban when it came to, some of this NIL stuff and came to getting players in position to succeed. And I'm very curious where, of course, Kalen wouldn't jump for any situation. He would jump for the right situation. And if he believes that that's Alabama, I'm very curious as to what some of these NIL deals, what that infrastructure might look like, similar to what Washington's Montlight Futures program is, where I know it doesn't necessarily get talked about in the same way as some of the top NIL programs in the country, but it absolutely is one where it played a really big factor in helping take care of guys like Michael Penix, like Rome Odunze, Jalen McMillan, Braylon Trice, all of these top flight players that Washington is now sending off to the draft, where that was a really big thing for a lot of those guys. And I'm really curious as just how that's going to carry over with Kalen, because I know that that's something that's very important to him, and because he knows he understands what kind of success that can bring for the long term of a program.
Another thing that's going to be interesting about this is who Alabama retains, if anybody, from the current staff who knows about recruiting. One name in particular, Travaris Robinson, T-Rob, as we like to call him, who ironically played at Auburn. He is one of Alabama's best recruiters, and he is the lead recruiter, I think, for one Ryan Williams, who I believe to be the best wide receiver in the country in the high school ranks. And he just decommitted from Alabama when Saban retired. I think if T-Rob were to be retained, Alabama would still be right in the middle of that. But it's going to be really interesting to see what DeBoer's recruiting attitude is. I mean, because Nick Saban's was, hey, you give me the best players and I'll make myself a good coach. And I think that's a wonderful, and he also was a fantastic coach, but at the same time, when you have the best players, it makes things a little bit easier. But I want to go back to DeBoer here for a second. He's only 49 years old. Oddly, he's 2 years younger than I am. He's 260 times more successful than I am, but he's only 2 years old, younger than me. So that's a good thing, if you ask me, for Alabama, because I like sort of having the young guy that's still kind of hungry, because I think this is going to be a young man's game from here on out, because there's so much to keep up with, and you've got to be able to relate to the youth now more than ever. But just what do you think about Kalen DeBoer? What did you learn about him from his time at Washington?
I learned that he leaves a positive impact on everybody that he comes across. I learned that just no matter who it is, no matter who he talks to, just from conversations that, especially I had a couple of really great conversations with multiple members of the staff from down at the Sugar Bowl and at the national championship, who just, all they did was, because strength coach Ron McKeefrey was a big one, where one of the big quotes he gave me was, Kalen's the kind of guy who's going to do something 9 times before he asks you to do it once, where he's one of those guys that will go out of his way to make sure that he takes care of every little meticulous detail. And he wants to make sure that literally every aspect of his program is put in the best position possible to win. And just as an example for what Washington was in the post Jimmy Lake just disaster is the best way to put it. Washington was not in a good place. There was a lot of issues with, just with the infrastructure of the team, with just different things that were set up. Kalen DeBoer came in and fixed all of those in the span of 8-9 months. He did a great job putting a nutrition team in place. He got a new strength coach, just a whole strength and conditioning team in place that did a really fantastic job, especially compared to just, some of the differences with the last one. And he looked at all of these other things off the field and said, we can improve here, we can improve here, we can improve there, and knows how to go and put those, just, put that plan into action and make sure that it looks that way when you step on the football field.
Interesting. When we come back, I want to talk a little bit about Washington's year this year. And did Kalen DeBoer help make Michael Penix, or was it the other way around? Right now, though, I need to tell everybody about FanDuel. Man, FanDuel is so much fun. I'm sure Roman plays FanDuel because it is so much fun. It's just absolutely the best thing to get involved with right now. The NFL playoffs are going on. They're hot and heavy. It's going to be so much fun tomorrow. I can't wait to see that Dolphins Kansas City game in 0-degree weather. And right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. You can't beat that with a stick. That's $150 in bonus bets, whether you win or whether you lose. It's that simple. The app is so easy to use, and there's so many different ways to bet. You can have the same game parlays, live same game parlays. You can find bets in the new expanded Explore tab. You can make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, which is the best way to find popular parlays, and much, much more. There's so much to do at FanDuel.com. Go check them out. FanDuel.com/LockedOn. That's FanDuel.com/LockedOn to make your first bet a layup. And I don't know why they tell me to say make your first bet a layup when really it should be a chip shot field goal, because that's what we're talking about is football. FanDuel is official partner of the NFL.
They're just rubbing the layup thing in because I smoked one earlier when I was down playing basketball with some of my buddies this morning. I smoked a real bad layup. Oh, it was ugly.
I got you. So Michael Penix had,
Yeah.
I mean, you could make the argument, I'm sure you feel this way, that maybe he deserved the Heisman. I'm a Jaden Daniels guy myself. I got to see him up close and personal, but I love Michael Penix too. And I especially have an affinity for left-handed quarterbacks after Tua Tagovailoa. Now, let me ask this. Without Michael Penix, would Washington been as close to as good as they were this year? Now, that's a loaded question because that's like saying, without Najee Harris or without Derrick Henry, would Alabama have won the national championship in 2015? I understand, but I think you know where I'm going here. Like, would there have been a massive drop-off? And I know that Washington got Will Rogers from Mississippi State to commit, which is another interesting thing. Where is he going to end up? But regardless, just you take it from there.
So the first thing I'll say is whatever this coaching staff believes, and of course, we'll see what he decides to do, who he decides to bring with him. Whatever Kalen and depending on what happens with Ryan Grubb, whatever they believe they want with a quarterback, I'd be comfortable with personally, because they did a fantastic job of helping Michael Penix get better. And of course, you can't leave the receivers out of the conversation, right? Rome Odunze, Jalen McMillan, Jalen Polk. Watching him at the Sugar Bowl, I have never seen a quarterback just that dialed in and that accurate as Michael Penix was that day. And I believe that, as a Patriots fan, that it's a little bit of a give and take there. You can't have one without the other, just like you can't have Brady without Belichick, Belichick without Brady. So I feel like that's really the best way to put it, because on top of that, Washington's offensive line was a huge part of Michael Penix's success. Of course, he still has to get the ball there. He still has to do all that. But Washington's offensive line has done a fantastic job over the last 2 seasons, just staying stout. They've been one of the best coached offensive lines in the country over the last couple of years. So, I'm not saying Michael Penix is a product of the system, but Kalen DeBoer's offense unlocked the most from Michael Penix, and all of the pieces that he had around him did a great job of that. And of course, being at Alabama, just everything all the resources that he's going to have available to him there could definitely help, just continue to help him just be one of the best quarterback developers in the country.
Yeah. Boy, I know some Alabama fans that were like, boy, wish Michael Penix wouldn't mind transferring too if he would just stick around in college for another year. I don't even know if he has another year. I don't know. Does he have a COVID year left?
He technically has one more year left, but I don't think he'll be.
Yeah, I mean, when you're projected to be like the second pick in the draft, I think, or third pick, whatever it is, I think I would head out of here. I do want to address something here. I just learned the other day, by the way, that I can put these comments up here. Dennis Headley says, I know Kalen DeBoer was not Alabama's first choice, but as a Pac fan, I know he's a class act. I wish him the best. I'm going to tell you something, Dennis. I don't know that he wasn't the first choice. I mean, there has been so much out there about Dan Lanning, but I think there was a lot of contractual stuff that made Dan Lanning a non-starter, frankly. There was some stuff out there about Sarkisian, obviously. I think what you do in these searches is you sort of kick the tires all the way around. But I can tell you this, that Greg Byrne, Alabama's athletic director, he's a very determined man. He's a very focused man. And I told this story on Locked On Bama that I know a friend that actually called Greg Byrne and said, hey, when Alabama had an opening at the basketball position, said, hey, I happen to know that Rick Pitino would be interested in our gig. You want me to try and work something out? He said, I just hired our coach. He's from the University of Buffalo. And guess what? Nate Oates has turned out okay at Alabama. Greg Byrne went and found his man, and he got him, and it did great. And I think this will be a good hire as well. It's not, it's not somebody Alabama fans are very familiar with. As I said, I mean, he's from South freaking Dakota. I mean, how are we supposed to know anything about him? But So yeah, and a couple of people are asking, has this been confirmed? No, this has not been announced or confirmed, but I mean, it's all done, but the ink drying at this point, right, Roman?
That's, I can't confirm anything on that front. I just, from my knowledge, Washington is still making a really aggressive push to keep him. That's why, because Washington just hired a new athletic director a couple months ago in Troy Dannon from Tulane. And everything he said when he got here was football is the cash cow. Football is king. And there have been rumors going around. I know this is something else that Ross Dellinger put out there, is that there has been a contract offer on the table for Kalen DeBoer for a while. And it sounds like Jimmy Sexton was somebody just in his ear saying, hey, hold off. Let's hold on. Let's see what happens here. So there's still a lot going on here. Yeah, it doesn't look like anything is 100% confirmed at this point, but it's certainly trending in this direction.
Yeah, and I'm going to tell you something. I have no problem saying this. If Kalen DeBoer does not wind up at Bama, this will be the most ridiculed podcast I've ever done. Considering, I have no problem saying that. But here I am trying to get out in front of a couple of things. I'm not trying to scoop anybody. I mean, everybody else in the world is reporting this is all done, but the crying. So that's where I'm going with this. And
yeah,
I just really
haven't done
want
that
to
yet
get
either. I still have a lot of that to get out later.
You still got some crying to do. I understand.
Just a little bit.
Okay, when we come back, I want to talk a little bit more about the culture he has created at Washington and how that has made you feel. But right now, I want to tell everybody about GameTime. I love the GameTime app. I'm telling you, Locked On College is the promo code you want to use for GameTime. I've used the GameTime app myself several times. I used it to go to a Miami Dolphins game, see them play the Carolina Panthers this year. I used it to get a World Series ticket for my son who goes to Arizona State. I've used it for the Alabama-Tennessee game to take my daughter's friend who had never been to a college football game ever. And it was just fantastic. And the GameTime app was so great. It let me see my seats and where I would be sitting and the view and everything else. It's the best. You can get these last minute deals at the best prices and they're guaranteed. You want to go to GameTime, you want to download that app, and you want to use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. That's code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. You will not regret this. I promise you. I'm telling you, when we have these sponsors, I like to use them and because I want to give you personal experience. I just rattled off 3 games that I used. I also used it, by the way, to go see Alabama play Liberty in basketball at Legacy Arena a couple of Saturdays ago. I was able to get 6 tickets very easily, very quickly, and very inexpensively. It was awesome. Go check out the GameTime app and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Okay, so one thing that's been so big about Nick Saban at Alabama, and we were ripe for this, by the way. I don't know. Roman, how old are you, buddy?
I'm 26.
Okay. Wish I hadn't asked. But
I get that a lot.
You don't remember, I'm sure, when Alabama took on hired Nick Saban in 2007 in January of 2007. I remember pretty vividly. And I'm telling you, we were lost in space. We were floating. We had no leadership. We were a rudderless ship in the middle of an ocean we've never heard of. And Nick Saban came in and basically drill sergeanted us into position. I think we are still ready for that. We still can use a guy like that. And it sounds like Kalen DeBoer is that kind of guy. Like he's going to take care of the details. I used to make the joke that since Nick Saban had been at Alabama, I never worry about anything. I don't worry about winning games. I don't worry about being upset. I don't worry about recruiting, and I don't worry about paying my taxes. Nick Saban will handle all that. So right. I feel like Kalen DeBoer is that same kind of guy, that he is attention to detail. And the word I keep hearing on Washington message boards and other things is culture. And he has created a good one there for you guys.
No, that's 100% accurate, where they're just, and this is, so my first year covering Washington professionally was 2021. The culture was terrible that year. There were a whole lot of problems and a lot of that stemmed from Jimmy Lake and a lot of things that just kind of were just falling out that way. Kalen DeBoer came in to a roster that didn't trust each other, to a roster that had no idea what was going on, and some guys at the portal, not a ton, but a lot of them decided to stick it out, and a lot of them decided to give him a chance. And by the start of spring practice, everybody loved him. Everybody was all in there. There was, and one, I know I put it out on Twitter a couple of weeks ago during the Sugar Bowl was we talked to linebacker Edifon Ulofoshio, 6th-year senior. He struggled a lot with injuries over his time at Washington. And he talked about like, yeah, I could have left after last year. I could have left after the year before. But the one thing that kept making me come back was Kalen DeBoer and his culture, because he's just installed just this culture of love and togetherness and that just belief in each other. And they talked about it being a player-led program where it's just all the players are always on the same page. You could tell just from any time you watch like the Washington team walk around that they were always in sync, that they always just, and it shows on the football field too, especially on the offensive side, where there was just always this level of trust and this level of brotherhood between all of those guys. And you could see it in the locker room after the national championship game, where everybody was obviously devastated, but they all just had this, it was very clear that they all came back together for this same goal. And they all wanted to come back for one reason and were united in all of that. And a lot of that was thanks to Kalen DeBoer's culture, because we saw them playing a lot of close games, but they never got their heads down. They really never just wavered in any way, shape, or form, despite struggling as much as they did against Arizona State, despite, being 10-point underdogs to Oregon, a team they had already beaten in the Pac-12 championship. There was never any wavering, and a lot of that was thanks to Kalen DeBoer's culture.
I had to put Dexter Wright's comment up there. There's a guy that listens to our podcast all the time. Really appreciate it. Luke, put a smile on your face. We ain't going nowhere. I'm not a natural smiler. I can smile, but I'm not necessarily good at it. But anyway, this is me smiling. And I'm very happy about this hire. I'll be honest with you. So Dexter, I don't want you to think I don't like this hire a lot. I do see a lot of people in the comments saying, hey, he's an elite coach, not an elite recruiter. A couple of things. And again, Roman, I don't want any Washington fan to take this the wrong way at all. But Alabama has more resources and a better recruiting base than the University of Washington. So let's see how he recruits here. The state of Alabama, the state of Mississippi, per capita put out as many NFL players as any state. And then when you consider you've got Georgia next door and you've got Florida next door, and Alabama dips into Texas all the time, and Louisiana. I mean, Alabama's got a great recruiting base. And I don't mean that as an insult to Washington. That's just geography. And so let's give him a chance to see what he's going to do. I think I'll tell you this. I do want to give Washington a compliment. I've never been to a game there. I've always wanted to go to a game there, but I went to Husky Stadium. It's one of the prettiest venues I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, it's awesome.
It is gorgeous. And so I highly recommend going there and checking out a game. I want to do that at some point. Maybe we'll schedule Washington sometime. But, that old Big Ten foe Washington.
That's still weird to say. I'm still like trying to wrap my head around that now that, especially now that the football season's over.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, listen, bud, I'm going to let you go. I know you got your own live shows to do. I appreciate everybody tuning in. I just wanted to, come on live and let some people get to know Kalen DeBoer a little bit. And so, Roman, you were the best one to do it. Hey, man, I know how it feels to lose a coach. We lost Dennis Franchione a long time ago. So, props and condolences and everything else. I don't think I used the term props right. That's where you're 26. I'm 51. Anyway, I'll talk to you later, buddy. And, best of luck with your coaching search. And I hope things go well for you guys. I'm pulling for you.
Luke, appreciate you.
All right, roll tide, everybody.